Today I'm going to look at creating proxy files in camera versus creating them in Premiere Pro. So after loads of you asked for a proxy files video, here it is. I'm going to show you how to create proxy files in Premiere Pro. I'm going to show you how to switch them on in camera and how to make them work in Premiere Pro as well. When editing my videos, I always use proxy files. I do have a dedicated workstation and it's got really high specs, but the H.264 files still slow this system down. For those of you who don't know, proxy files are a way of creating smaller files so your computer better copes with these files when editing. When using these files in Premiere Pro, you'll find that the editing process is a lot faster. You won't have to wait for the monitor to catch up, and also you'll find that it'll instantly go to the point where you're at on the timeline. Also, when you add effects, this won't slow it down either. So it really does speed up your editing process no end. I found that before I was using proxy files, editing H.264 files was an absolute nightmare. It would be very jittery and stuttery, and you'd almost have to wait sometimes for the monitor to catch up. So Premiere Pro looks at these proxy files and uses them while editing. It will have your original files in a folder, and then when you come to export the video, it'll just use these original files and not the proxy files, so you'll get all the quality that you originally recorded in. Now, I've been creating proxy files for a while in Premiere Pro, but I want to know how different they are compared to the proxy files in camera. Does it make much of a difference, and does one work better than the other? To make them in your A7iii, go to tab 2, 1 of 9, and select Proxy Recording On. When I shoot in 4K XAVC 25 frames a second, the main file is 100 megabit per second, 3840 by 2160 XAVC. It's in the private /M4 root /clip folder. It then saves a proxy file as a 10 megabit per second, 1280 by 720 XAVC. This is in the private /M4 root /sub folder. One thing I found when having proxy set to on in camera is that when you're using a monitor, the monitor would go blank as soon as you press record. Now, this is really irritating if you're doing talking pieces to camera like this, or you're shooting B-roll from a gimbal where you have a monitor to see what's going on the back of the camera. In these two circumstances, I'd end up making my proxies in the computer afterwards. One other thing I've noticed is that when you have proxy set to on, it disables face tracking in 4K. I think this must have something to do with the camera being at its processing limit. They also can't be used when shooting in 1080p 100 frames a second in PAL or 120 frames a second in NTSC. The proxy option is blanked out. Also, when shooting in AVC HD, proxies are disabled as well. I think this is because they are interlaced frames. If you've recorded these proxies in camera, there are a few changes that you have to make them work in Premiere Pro. First of all, put them in a folder next to your main files and name the folder Proxies. Then you have to change the name of all the clips whilst maintaining the first part of the name. If you have lots of clips, select all of your proxies, right-click, click Rename All, and replace text. I changed the S03 to _proxy, and then click on Rename. On a PC, it's a little bit more tricky, so click on the eye in the corner or the link in the description to a video showing you how to do this. Then in Premiere Pro, after importing all of your main files, select them all, highlight all of your clips, right-click, click on Proxies, attach Proxies, and then find the first file and select the first proxy. It should attach all proxies. Now when you toggle proxies on, they should all be a lot easier to edit. If you haven't made your proxies in camera, either you may have forgotten to switch it on, or you needed those functions that it disabled when you have proxies switched to on. You can create them in Premiere Pro. You need to have Premiere Pro 2016 or onwards. This is when they first introduced proxy files in Premiere Pro. They do have presets already built into Premiere Pro for your proxies, but I prefer to create my own. I use the GoPro Cineform because it's a very good editing codec. First of all, you need to create your proxy preset. To do this, open Adobe Media Encoder. Then in Preset Browser, click plus, create encoding preset. I name it with the settings I'm going to select in a minute, so we'll name it last. Select QuickTime, and based on preset, have the GoPro Cineform YUV 10-bit. Make sure video and audio is checked, and in the video codec, select GoPro Cineform. Then I'll set my basic video settings. I'll put quality on 1, I'll set the width to 1280 and the height to 720. I shoot with 25 frames a second, so I'll set the frame rate to 25 frames a second. If you shoot in a different frame rate, make sure this is the same frame rate as your original files. Otherwise you'll have issues when editing. I'll set my field order to progressive. I'll put the aspect on square pixels. With the depth, I'll select YUV 10/BPC. And then that's all I'll change. Then I'll name the file, and I'll name it 1280 by 720 25 FPS Cineform. And then I'll click OK. Next, click plus, create ingest preset. Check transcode files to destination. Select any destination. It doesn't matter as you'll be selecting the actual destination later. I'll just select my movie file for now. I'll change the format to QuickTime, then I'll select the preset I've just made. So I can see it here, it's 1280 by 720, 25 frames per second Cineform. Then I'll name this ingest preset 1280 by 720 25 FPS Cineform ingest. Then I'll click OK. Now you should be able to see it in the preset list. I'll right click on this and then I'll reveal preset file. You'll just need to note where this file is so when you open Premiere Pro you can find it easily. Now back in Premiere Pro, import your original files into Premiere Pro, select all, right click, click on Proxies, create Proxies, and then you add ingest preset. You just got to remember where this preset was, where you noted it down just a minute ago. So find the preset and open the preset. Select this ingest preset that you've just created, then make sure the destination is set to next to original media in Proxy folder. Then click OK. From now on, when you create presets, you won't have to go through this whole process of creating an ingest preset file. It'll always be there in your list. So all you have to do now is import more files that you may have recorded, select them all, right click, click on Proxies, create Proxies, select your preset and click on OK. Then it will automatically create these proxies in Adobe Media Encoder. If you go back to your original files in Finder or in Windows, you can see the proxies are in a folder next to the main files. Now when you click your proxy file toggle, make sure it's blue, and now your editing process should be a lot quicker. If you can't see it, click on the plus sign in the corner, find it and drag it down to the viewing panel and then click OK. You'll find that the playhead will be more responsive and scrubbing will be a lot smoother. If you have different folders with different SD cards or different shoot days, you want to make sure you process these separately. Sometimes proxies can also become detached. If this happens, click on Clip, right click, Proxies, Attach Proxies, and then find the first file and select the first proxy. It should attach all proxies. This is another reason why it's better to have them in a folder next to that clip, because if they do become detached, you know exactly where to look for them. And that's about it. What I've found is there's not that much difference between the two. If I scrub through the timeline with the proxies created in camera, you can see it moves smoothly. With the GoPro Cineform proxies that I created in Premiere Pro, when I scrub through the timeline, it does it at a similar rate. You may have to do some testing with your system, but using proxy files does really speed up your workflow. Due to the restrictions when having this function turned on in camera, I normally create my proxies in Premiere Pro. Now if you use proxies, let me know in the comments below how you get on with using them. Do you create them in camera or do you create them afterwards? I'm only using Premiere Pro, but if you use Final Cut Pro, I've heard that's a really good program for creating them as well. Let me know your workflow and let me know how you get on with proxy files. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. As always, if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. And for weekly tutorials, hints and tips in photography and videography, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.